Let's overreact to the NFL Combine. At the 101 in a 12-team Superflex tight end premium PPR Dynasty League, I got to go with Caleb Williams 101. The value of the quarterback, and look, this is under the clarity. You earn the 101, you earn the 102, you earn the 103, you earn the 111, right? Just to be clear. I know the reality is a lot of leagues you're trading. So I know there's going to be very variable team needs, team situations, but in this context, I got to go with the quarterback at 101. I can understand. Let's say you somehow got the 101, finessed, did your wheeling dealing, and you got quarterbacks and you could use a Marv. Okay. But I'm going Caleb at the 101. That's just me. It's not really going to change. At the 102, it's Drake May for me. I'm a big Drake May guy. You can yell at me in the comments, but I see a guy that's got very nice fantasy upside and just a route to being a top 10 firm dynasty quarterback. And I'm frankly valuing these top three already, if not top 10, right in and around that range. And that's why I've got Jaden Daniels here. Jaden Daniels at the 103. It's the first three quarterbacks for me. It is that simple. It's not to slight Marvin Harrison Jr. or another receiver for that matter. It is just in super flex formats, I am going to go with the QB play. I'm going to go with the value play. And if my team is in this position where I was this bad, I'm going to go for the most potential to actually turn my roster around, to potentially give me the most trade flexibility, right? So that's just my underlying philosophy. Not to say I don't love Marvin Harrison Jr. I love a lot of players in this draft class, and we'll get into specifically how much, how many, and the lines we might draw. But Marvin Harrison Jr., quite a pick here at the 104, as is Malik Neighbors at the 105. Okay, and I've been saying it. Check the receipts on this channel. Malik Neighbors, he's on the same tier as me for Marv. Okay, these are special players. We'll see. Obviously, look, this is not taking into account a mock draft, so to speak, of landing spots. This is effectively kind of where I value the players, how I would draft them. Okay, but we'll see. Cardinals versus Chargers possibly, or the Patriots. The landing spots are really going to ultimately factor in, but this is my exercise thought of preparing, anticipating, and ranking really these guys accordingly in this 2 round mock draft. At the 106, it's Roma Dunze. Okay, talk about what things you like to see. The dude just would not leave Indianapolis. He needed that 6'6" 3-cone drill, which I don't even know if he necessarily got, but if that doesn't show some dedication, I mean, I don't know what does. And if that doesn't excite you a little bit, I don't know what can, because this is another special receiver prospect. Okay. These guys would all, I mean, be easily the receiver one in last year's class, head and shoulders within their own tier, but they just unfortunately have this relative kind of substitutes, comparables within this own draft class. But good for you. You got the chance to draft one at the 106. At the 107, it's Brock Bowers for me. Completing this Silky 7 and Superflex 7 heaven, so to speak. Brock Bowers, look, he can go up as high as the 104, depending on your degree of tight end premium and team needs. Of course, I want to reiterate that with each and every pick here, but this is just my personal ranking, personal draft of these players. With the 108, I'm liking this pick a lot as well because I can get a JJ McCarthy, a top 15 NFL draft pick. That is the momentum. That's how it's tracking. Okay. JJ McCarthy, he had a decent combine. Definitely just fit in with the rest of the guys in a sense that maybe it wasn't so overwhelmingly head and shoulders above everybody else. But again, we're talking some good quarterbacks. Okay. Not necessarily your top three guys, but guys that are worth first round NFL draft capital, JJ McCarthy in particular. And I guess my point being, for every negative thing thrown his way about how he was so, you know, purposely underutilized at Michigan, how it's such a, you know, onus on him for his lack of talent. Just not the case. Okay. That's just not the case. Get rid of those tired narratives. I certainly am here at the 108 with drafting JJ McCarthy. Okay. And I would. and I will. 108s don't really have a lot of them though in my league, so that's potentially a spot where I'm targeting to potentially trade up to be honest. Earn the 109 here. Give me Brian Thomas Jr. Okay, another guy had an unbelievable combine. I've talked about, look, in a purely athletic sense, he compares to Julio Jones. That's the type of athlete. 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 Athlete as Julio Jones, given the sheer touching 6'3", almost 210 pounds, 4'3", 38.5-inch vert. Just incredible, incredible athlete, and really a guy that I think has a chance to be a top 15, top 12 receiver upside in terms of dynasty landscape, in terms of the production. That's what I see with Brian Thomas Jr., and I got to recognize him here at the 109. At the 110, I am very, very convicted in this quarterback class, and I think there's going to be 5 drafted in the first round of the NFL draft, okay? This is where I'm at in my preparation, in my anticipation, okay? I think Bo Nix is slated to be a potential 5th first-round quarterback in the NFL draft. There is just a complete gauntlet. Look, even when you get outside the top 5, starting with the Giants, the Falcons, really interesting. Let me know if you guys think Justin Fields ends up there in Atlanta or not. There's a lot of mixed signaling, which is par for the course this time of year, of course. But look, there's those two in the back half of the top 10. There's the Russell Wilson-less Broncos just outside the top 10, along with the Minnesota Vikings. There is the Seattle Seahawks, even the Raiders. There's a lot of teams that could potentially trade up, try to get a quarterback, or depending on where they are, just have to take one because they don't believe they'll be able to get a Bo Nix possibly when they come back to pick on day 2. So maybe they then figure out on the flip side how to jump back into the first round just to get that 5th-year option, potential Lamar Jackson type draft capital, end of the first round, which I can possibly totally see. And just with that first round draft capital label in Superflex leagues, give me the quarterback at the 110. The 111. This is where I got to go receiver. I got to go receiver here, and for me, it's Adonai Mitchell. Not his Texas teammate not his Texas teammate Xavier Worthy, excuse me. But nonetheless, look, I've been big Brian Thomas, Adonai Mitchell fans. You can check the logs, right? Check the chat logs, okay? They have been a part of the group of 3 after the next 3, so to speak. The first 3 receivers that you saw go 4 through 6. Adonai Mitchell, he's basically the next best guy I think that has a chance at a potential wide receiver 1 in an NFL offense. I'm not quite convicted of that, but I believe he's got an incredible skill set. He clearly put that on display at the combine, and I think you got to recognize him here. Pretty nice pick to have here if you're sitting at the 111. And at the 112, this is where, well, okay, now I'll pick his teammate Xavier Worthy. Don't have to wait too long. I think Xavier Worthy, look, you can't totally singularly just be affected by the combine by his 40-yard dash. But what you can be is very excited. You can be anticipatory about how that is going to boost his draft stock. Okay? How it's really just pushing him up. I think really sliding him into that first round now in the NFL draft. I mean, I just see a team you get into the 20s and, 30, 31, 32, the end of between 20, the last third of the first round, somebody's just going to pick Xavier Worthy in my money, for my money in my books, okay? And you're going to have to recognize him and respect him. Now, I see a lot of stuff. Look, I think he compares to, a Marquise Hollywood Brown, right? I'm seeing people just say, oh, well, the 40, John Ross, look at that. John Ross, look, he never truly had the type of production profile at Washington as Xavier Worthy did at Texas, okay? And he is not purely this deep speed one-trick pony, okay? He gets involved in screens, okay? So I just want to start to displace some of those tired narratives that you might be seeing with a guy like Xavier Worthy. As we get on to the second round, here, we're not stopping the wide receiver train. And for me, a little bit of a deviation from what I had been doing in my previous mocks, but I got to recognize Ladd McConkey. Okay? Ladd McConkey is a pure separator, and people love Brett Coleman. Everybody in the draft community, I'm loving the campaign for Ladd to the Panthers. Basically, a back end of the first, the beginning of day two, the 33rd overall pick. The Panthers give Bryce Young a guy who can separate, just be a safety valve, okay? A guy that he can somewhat rely on, and I think he can rely on to a great degree with Ladd McConkey. The 202. For me, look, this is where I'll do a little bit of a tiebreaker. I'm going quarterback. Give me Michael Penix because I look at Penix. Look, Will Levis was viewed so poorly, perceived horribly by the Dynasty community at large. And if you picked him here and around this range, you're looking at a guy you really recognize some value and is at least a top 11, top 10 pick in a redraft, okay? And so you got to bet on this quarterback upside. And with Michael Penix, I think he's bound to get that Will Levis type draft capital. And again, super flex formats, you got to take a shot at the quarterback position when appropriate. When you see 64 plus quarterbacks start any given year, the last several years. Okay, so that's 2 per team. So I got to go give Michael Penix some love here. Could easily see him and Bo Nix being interchangeable, so to speak. But that's just where I'm at here with Penix at the 202. And at the 203 here, this is where we really revert back to receiver. And for me, it's Keon Coleman. It's Keon Coleman. Keon Coleman, to be clear, he's been the guy. I'll save you some chat log review or some video review, video assistant review, VAR. You know there. Shout out the Gunners. With Keon here, he was the guy in kind of my next 3 after the first 3 receivers, historically. But I just look at Xavier Worthy and McConkey. They just kind of have me liking them a little bit more. I like their skill sets a little bit more in terms of being fantasy relevant, but not to say, look, these are very talented receivers. This is a historic receiver class, okay? So that means a guy at 203, a Keon Coleman, who I think is profiling best case high end. He's like a T. Higgins. I can see him being a T. Higgins. I can see him being the T. Higgins to a CD Lamb to a Stephon Diggs, that part of the first round. And for the 40-yard dash takes and, oh my God, Keon Coleman, just as he can't get too high or too low in the case of Xavier Worthy, 40, and Keon Coleman, 40, necessarily. You can look at the body of work at the combine, and you can see Keon Coleman consistently the fastest player actually running the routes, the game speed, that underlying trust in your ability in your hands to go up and get the ball amongst all the leaders there, okay? And so I look at Keon Coleman and I really like him. I think I like him a lot more than a lot of people in the Dynasty community, and I will continue to be in that camp until proven otherwise. And there's been nothing to dissuade me up to this point. With the 204, we're going back to the receiver well. And for me, it's got to be not Johnny, but Roman Wilson. Okay? Pardon that scroll. Roman Wilson, again, another guy, I really like his skill set. And this rounds out, not rounding out quite a top 10, but this is a top 9 receivers that are awesome players and could really break a multitude of ways. Particularly, I think, once you get past Brian Thomas as wide receiver 4, there is so much fluidity, so much to be determined with the receivers and how they're positioning. Totally ends up. But what is even more fluid has to be the running back rankings. And for me, look, I'm going Jonathan Brooks because he's my RB1. And for me, receiver or running backs for that matter, ACL injuries are effectively the modern Tommy John for running backs, to liken it to pitchers. It's just par for the course. You almost expect, that's the anticipation for running backs at some point in their career to have to overcome this type of injury. And I'm not going to bet against Jonathan Brooks. I think, look, I can't totally expect him to be this guy that week 1, lights the world on fire. But nonetheless, I think he gets that significant type of running back capital where it's looking on day 2. I'm being clear, not the Bijan Robinson, another Texas running back, or the Jahmyr Gibbs type of prospect, but nonetheless, very serviceable, very fantasy relevant, as is one of his other running back counterparts, Trey Benson. Okay, Trey Benson, really nice combine for him, really good size, speed, profile, production at Florida State, Oregon transfer. Do we see another Oregon running back? And Bucky Irving? I don't know. Stay tuned. But Nonetheless, this is where I think you start to see a little bit of a run on running backs in kind of your end of your early second, mid first round, or mid second for sure is when a running back run I think occurs. But keeping that running back run together will not be Xavier Legette. Because look, call me biased as a South Carolina fan, but Xavier Legette, talk about a freak, a profile. And there's guys that look, I will always lean on people that are much more seasoned, much more experienced than me. And you see guys that have done it. You see a Steve Smith say, look, Xavier Legette, a DK Metcalf, maybe even a better version of DK Metcalf. And look, he's not this complete height freak at 6'3, 6'4 like a DK, but he has a huge, thick build at 220 plus pounds. And you look at the relative athletic scores. I mean, with Xavier Legette, sub 4'4, running the same as Lad McConkey, Roman Wilson type, the same 40 when you're 30, 40 pounds heavier. Insane stuff. Insane, incredible stuff from Xavier Legette. And I think, look, another guy, a wide receiver 10, that's still a top 50 player on NFL draft boards, which is just unreal. It gets at the true depth of this class and how you're staring at 10 within the first 20-ish picks in your Superflex drafts. It's insane. Get used to it. Get ready to learn wide receiver in your drafts, bud. But speaking of the 208, we're not going receiver quite yet. Just again, we're going to go with running back, and there's a multitude I could see here. I'm going to go Braylon Allen because I like his profile to be a potential 15 carry guy at the NFL. And if he goes to, midday two to a competent offense, like, hey, let's say staying home in Wisconsin, let's say he goes to the Packers, would love that for him. And just if he's at an offense where they're competent, they get into the red zone, that's where I think a guy like Braylon Allen could really shine and just get you a potential 10 touchdown season. Not not this burner. He's not. Just because he's a big guy doesn't mean he's like as dynamic as a Derrick Henry by no means. But opted not to run at the combine. We'll see what he does at the potential Wisconsin Pro Day. But look, if he even runs in the not 2.5s, that would be actually insane and impossible. If he runs in the 4.5s at his Pro Day, I mean, man, he's really shooting up. I could see him being RB1 by many, and even that gaining that respect by me, assuming he gets that respect at the NFL draft. But really nice option here at the 208, and kind of continuing that RB run for a little bit. I got Blake Corum there, but for me, I'm going to show a little bit of love. I'm going to show a little bit of love to Marshawn Lloyd here, my guy Marshawn Lloyd. I think he has a little bit more of a dynamic skill set than Blake Corum, and really to be a potential threat on the ground and through the air. And so then I think he just gets more opportunities possibly in that sense. But really good player, really had a great combine, as did, look, I'll go back to the streak, Blake Corum. I thought he looked really good for his size, for him running how fast he did. A little box check, move on. Another, again, a group of 5 here that I think has a really good shot, nice day 2 capital. And there's some other guys too that I haven't mentioned. And I talked about Bucky Irving, excuse me. Estime didn't have a great combine, but can't totally write him off. Ray Rice did have a great combine. Look at too, Jalen Wright, all the way buried on these sleeper draft boards, but really good kind of core of guys at the running back position who could very well be relevant within your second round. This for me is kind of where it stops, a total of 5 in the second round. Just gonna, for the sake of it, because I gotta return back to some receiver well here, and my Troy Franklin hate stops here. Okay, Troy Franklin, I'm just not as necessarily convicted as him as a top 10 receiver as a lot of people are. You can check the logs again on my previous mock drafts. Never had him in the first round of my mocks. Never. I just don't quite see such a translatable skill set to the NFL and to that fantasy relevance. I think he could be a very nice player at the NFL and a guy that is consistently a top 50 player. And I could see him getting that early day 2 capital, second round type of draft pick. So I think he's likely, accordingly, then has to be recognized as a second round draft pick in your rookie drafts. So you can Stop screaming at me for the Troy Franklin hate. Let me know in the comments how high you view Troy Franklin. But for me, I can't quite put him too much higher than this. We'll see. But that's just where I am with Troy right now. Rounding out the second round. Really could go a multitude of ways here. Really could go a multitude of ways. I think for this video, drawing this arbitrary line, the top 24 players, so to speak, I really can't leave my guy Jalen Polk off. I cannot leave my guy Jalen Polk off the second round. I can't. You know, you look, no Jatavian Sanders, no Tez Walker, Corley Shipley, Irving. I mean, there's this cluster of guys that are really worth in traditional drafts, classes, second round type of picks. Just no room at the back of the inn right now. Okay. But that's my second round of this top 24 mock draft. Let me know how wrong I got it in the comments. Let me know your favorite picks, your not so favorite picks, guys. As we get up and just prepare, build up our excitement for the NFL draft. We got the 1K by draft day sub goal, guys. Going maniacal urgency in just growing this community. We're growing something special, and I look forward to interacting with each and every one of you in the comments here moving forward now and forever. Guys, I will see you in the next one. Have a great day.